Son of Saul. The list of first-time filmmakers who've played in competition at Cannes is a short one, and the list of those that won prizes is even smaller. That Laszlo Neam's debut Son of Saul won the grand prize on the Croyat certainly marks it out for attention, but those who haven't seen it yet probably aren't yet prepared for the gut-punch power and masterful filmmaking on display from the Hungarian director. The tremendous Gazaroreg plays an Auschwitz Sonderkommando, a Jewish prisoner forced into aiding the Nazis in the concentration camps, who discovers what he believes is the body of his estranged child in the gas chambers and sets out to give him a proper burial. Filmmakers have been grappling with the horrors of the Holocaust for 70 years now, but few such films have been as powerful as Neam's. Ko uses long, Lubuskin takes an astonishing sound design to throw you into a vision of the camps that take on an almost heightened level of nightmarishness, while never letting you forget that there is nothing even remotely heightened about it. Even if you've seen Schindler's List or Show, this filmmaker makes you feel as if you're bearing witness to those unprecedented atrocities, and thus makes sure that you'll never, ever forget what happened. Brooklyn. Brimming with charm, John Crowley's Brooklyn is an earnestly sweet tale that never feels cloying or manipulative. It's an old-school story told in an old-school way. Say Iris Ronan plays Alice, a young Irish woman who leaves her small town for New York, where she finds a new home and a new love with an Italian man in her new neighborhood. Brooklyn is simple, never deviating from its central characters or introducing obstacles into their path for obstacles' sake. The wide range of emotions felt by Ronan's Alice feels earned within the film, and the actress's blue eyes clearly communicate each of her thoughts. She has previously wowed us in films like Hannah and Atonement, but her work here feels like a new level of adult achievement. Shot by Yves Falangi, it's a golden look at 1950s Ireland and New York City, filled with François Seguin's perfect production design and Odile Dix Mairioa's gorgeous costumes. But the film isn't all sweetness and light. Alice's early days in New York are dominated by loneliness and isolation, and the event that sends her back to Ireland sent us into tears. However, it's impossible to leave Brooklyn feeling anything but joy, as well as the desire to immediately see it again. Spotlight. Tom McCarthy has been producing relatively solid dramedies for a handful of years. But this year, we got a peek at a couple of new sides of the director. The first was the god-awful Adam Sandler fiasco The Cobbler. But the second was this incredibly sure-footed and rigorous take on the Boston Globe team that broke the news of the sexual abuse scandal and cover-up in the early aughts. McCarthy snagged an impressive cast for the gig, all of whom are in top form and none of whom dominate the film, which is just how it should be. Spotlight is the definition of an ensemble film. It's a story of teamwork and trust and one of the finest depictions of journalism since All the President's Men. Despite being as exacting as it is, Spotlight manages keep the plot moving and maintains some of the sharpest tension of the year. It's a film of moral quandaries and ethical obligations, where the city of Boston stands as one of the most compelling characters. It's easy to imagine Spotlight in the hands of a different director, prone to overstuffing the film with melodrama and exploitation of this tragedy. Fortunately, we got McCarthy's. It's a deeply affecting, satisfying film and an impressive technical achievement. Room. Nothing about director Lenny Abrahamson's previous work could have prepared us for the emotionally visceral gut punch of Room. Based on a best-selling novel by Emma Donoghue, who also adapted her book for the screen, this picture is about Jack. A loving, energetic, and imaginative 5-year-old boy who spent his entire life imprisoned in a 10 feet by 10 feet room with his mother. In order to raise Jack in this horrific environment with any semblance of normalcy, Ma makes him believe that the room is the only place that exists in the world and that all the people and places he sees on TV are in a different galaxy. All of the information we get about Ma and Jack's predicament builds up to one of the most pulse-pounding, nail-biting, any other review buzzword cliché-generating sequences we've seen in a long time. Even though the thriller elements are laid to rest about halfway through Room, there's still a tremendously engaging emotional journey ahead, where Abrahamson smartly avoids every trap for conventional melodramatics that the basic story elements would seem to lay out for him. The performances from everyone involved are extraordinary, especially for a story that's ripe for hysterical dramatics. Tremblay carries the entire emotional weight of the picture with an exceptional display of natural empathy and energy, and Larsson's more than his match. The premise suggested a film that could have been almost impossibly bleak if Abrahamson put a foot wrong. Instead, it's deeply human. Inside Out. The last few sequel-heavy years aside, Pixar has built up such a reputation for brilliance that when the studio makes a film deemed only pretty good, as with the currently in theaters The Good Dinosaur, you can feel disproportionately disappointed. But that certainly wasn't the reaction to Inside Out, released earlier this year and which is certainly Pixar's most ambitious film and easily one of its best. Set inside the head of young Riley, whose emotional turmoil after moving to San Francisco sends the personifications of joy, Amy Poehler, and sadness, Phyllis Smith, into the deepest recesses of her mind, it's a remarkably mature yet accessible look at what makes us tick and which grapples with an elusive truth. Sadness isn't just unavoidable, it's necessary that so-called grown-up movies would cross the street to avoid. But this being from Pixar, and in particular from Up director Pete Docter, it's also a total, well, joy. Bright, exciting, funny. Was anything funnier this year than the film's closing credits? Or the gum commercial? Or the abstract thought section? Or Inside Out is fleet-footed, light of touch, beautifully voiced and impossibly touching. The bar's been raised once again. 45 years. Between his tremendous breakthrough with Weekend and his gorgeous work helming much of HBO's series Looking, we've had our eyes on British director Andrew Hay for a while. But no one was prepared for 45 years, a serious step up for the director in one of the very best relationship movies in a very long time. The film focuses on the run-up to the titular wedding anniversary of an elderly, seemingly happy married couple, and the fractures that appear when the body of his ex-girlfriend, who died in a mountaineering accident and has been frozen in the ice for half a century, is discovered. It's perhaps a contrived setup, but that's the last thing in Hay's film that's anything less than utterly truthful, particularly when it comes to performances from the two leads that come close to being the best roles of their 50-year careers. European in style without being austere, beautifully lensed throughout, it's perhaps above and beyond anything else a ghost story about how the past can haunt and change us long after the fact, how time shifts and changes us, and how unearthed secrets can make you re-evaluate everything in your life. Carol. Given the commensurate lack of buzz, it's possible you missed the boat on the exquisiteness of Todd Haynes' superb HBO miniseries Mildred Pierce. But let's not be nags, everyone's on board the Haynes train this year, and that's just gravy for all of us. Haynes' delicate, nearly note-perfect Carol is a swooning, romantic picture that makes you feel the grace notes of trembling desire in between words and between the eventually requited kisses and passionate moments. It is a movie about the unspoken moments of desire, the subtle gestures, the furtive glances, and the batted eyelashes we have to decode when falling in love, but are too deep in a place of vulnerability to play our hand. Immaculately crafted, tremendously acted, and rendered with consummate care and control, Carol is about the inexpressible, and the aching yearns of early, unformed loves and all the fragility it entails. It's a directing masterclass. Its two leads Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara deliver tour-de-force performances of restraint, and its score and cinematography gorgeously underscore all the pangs of implicit heartache with musical dolor and frosty visual reflection. With this impeccably made movie, Haynes, perhaps belatedly, is crystallized as one of America's greatest living directors. The Duke of Burgundy. Nothing in our poll of contributor voting surprised us as much as the strength of support for The Duke of Burgundy. We figured it might make the list somewhere, given our rave review, but we didn't imagine that an experimental art film about a sadomasochistic couple would appear on more lists than any film bar our winner, much less make the final top 3. But then again, it is fucking brilliant. A significant step up for director Peter Strickland even from his excellent last movie Berberian Sound Studio. It is, like 3 of our top 5, a relationship movie, in this case set in a world seemingly without men and focusing on the relationship between Evelyn, Chiara Diana, and Cynthia, side Seb Abbott Knudsen, 2 lepidopterologists who are deeply in love but are increasingly strained by Evelyn's highly submissive sexual tastes. Which might make it sound intimidating and unrelatable, but one of the film's many pleasures is the way that it makes a seemingly extreme situation utterly relatable and deeply moving. Strip away its gorgeous design and more expressionistic elements, and you'll find a deceptively sly, sexy, and playful picture, an impossibly tender love story beautifully performed by its 2 leads, and which tackles universal truths in the most specific way imaginable. Sicario. Denis Villeneuve cements his status as one of the most exciting working filmmakers with his furious, visceral thriller Sicario. Following the grim 1-2 punch of his gloomy, arresting prisoners and his what's-it of a doppelganger flick Enemy, Sicario emerges as Villeneuve's most assured and distressing work to date. A tale of inexorable moral compromise unfolding along the godless cartel city of Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Sicario is ultimately the story of Kate Mercer, a driven and resolutely unsentimental FBI agent who finds herself repeatedly thwarted by her male superiors when she agrees to enter this southwestern heart of darkness. Villeneuve has an almost eerie ability to stage set pieces of prolonged, heart-stopping tension as he does in a bullet-ridden showdown set at the U.S.-Mexico border, and his work here with Roger Deakins, who also gave Prisoners its dark, glistening patina, is some of the best work either has ever done. Emily Blunt is a force of raw, elemental pain as Kate, Josh Brolin is wonderfully slimy as her annoyingly laid-back supervisor, and rising star Jon Bernthal has a scene with Kate in a motel room that ranks as one of the most terrifying we've seen all year. But it's Benicio del Toro, as a man whose soul is all but a bygone thing, who quietly steals the show here. His Alejandro is a man of no allegiances, who, with his pointed goatee and predatory body movements, appears to be more wolf than man. Sicario follows Alejandro's grim, precise footsteps. It's coiled like a snake, with a bite just as deadly. Mad Max, Fury Road. The playlist's 2015 pick for the best film of 2015 didn't dominate to the extent that Under the Skin did last year, but from very early on in the voting process, it was clear what was going to come top. And what else could it be? Uniting everyone from highbrow cinephiles to explosion-happy genre fans. George Miller's 4th movie in his post-apocalyptic franchise was an absolute wonder, literally the best action movie in decades, and a classic even before the title character, Tom Hardy, has had his mask removed. Stripping down to the absolute basics, it's a chase movie in the same way that Buster Keaton's The General is a chase movie, barely ever stopping to catch a breath while building a fascinating world through side details and establishing complex characters through action. The director gifted us all with an adrenaline shot of pure, unfiltered cinema. One that returned grace and beauty to the summer blockbuster. One that wasn't afraid to get weird, like the blue-tinged section in the Midlands that feels almost like a Tarkovsky movie. One that stealthily put a woman at the heart of a testosterone-filled, gas-guzzling actioner. One crafted at a level that suggested that 95% of movies simply aren't trying hard enough. Miller's already started talking about potential further Max movies, but there's part of us that wants him to let it alone, because returning with something as utterly perfect as Fury Road is a big task.